Guys, please give a warm Rocky student welcome up to Carly Evans.
This feels like a mockery, Matt. I mean, this is pretty short, I'm not gonna lie, so. I know we couldn't raise the stand, so like it's not technically an insult, but like it's close enough. Okay. Shh. How's everybody doing tonight? More enthusiasm, come on, y'all. Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. All right, so first and foremost, let's talk about TikTok. Who here has TikTok? Okay, more of you. Come on, I want to see a hand like way up in the air. I know a lot of you guys have TikTok. I personally don't have TikTok, which I'm kind of glad, but also not. Morgan's like, yeah, me too. But for those of you who had TikTok or have TikTok still, how many of you guys had an absolute mental breakdown whenever TikTok got banned the other day? Like freaked. Middle school, I know some of y'all have TikTok. I want to see those hands raised. Some of y'all freaked, and I already know it. I already know. It's true. So a lot of people I knew were upset beyond their wits about TikTok being banned, right? I mean, like that was like a staple part of the community, both socially and like culturally, right? TikTok made a huge impact, and the amount of angry posts I saw were absolutely insane. Some of them, funny enough, were on TikTok, and I'm like, you realize half the people can't see that, right? And you may wonder, how exactly is this correlated to the message? I mean, it's TikTok, right? Like, what does this have to do with God? Well, personally speaking, some people might consider this like a problem in their life, right? It's a first world problem, but it's still a problem for some of us. Yes, granted, lots of people posted about it, but some were just angry, but less vocal maybe, right? Like there were people that they kept it kind of under wraps. They were still upset, but first world problem, right? And our lives are very similar to scenarios such as this one. Some of them can be more drastic though, but sometimes people are more vocal about their struggles than others, and that's just kind of the way that the cookie crumbles. As I go through my story today and sort of my personal testimony, something that I want to tie back to from the Bible is actually Job's story. Job, I would argue, is like a central figure in the Old Testament, and Job is this extremely wealthy figure who was described as like God-fearing, and he was just this wealthy individual who a lot of people respected for what he did. First and foremost, besides TikTok, one of the things that I always want to go back to for this is the concept that everybody is going through a battle, right? Everyone's battle sort of looks different, and everybody's battle is not going to match up to the person next to them, right? But one of the quotes that I absolutely love that correlates to this is, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about, right? A lot of people have things that they don't talk about. A lot of people have things that they keep under wraps. And my personal testimony is one of these things. Funny enough, in our group, we were talking about COVID and the impacts that COVID had. Now, COVID impacted people differently, of course, sort of like how everyone has their own battles that they go through. But for me personally, before COVID started, I was not exactly a social little butterfly, right? Like I was a weirdo. I'm not saying glasses make you weird, but like I wore some weird glasses, y'all. Like we're talking, I could have classified as a nerd easily, right? Like I had braces. I was one of those kids that you're like, oof, I'm not gonna talk to her, right? And my social life was meh. I had like 2 close friends, and like I would say that's about it, socially wise. Now, COVID's impact, as we started to kind of head into it, I didn't really realize the implications that would come out of it. But for me personally, this was a time period where I thrive in social environments, right? Not necessarily talking to people I don't know, but talking to the people that I do know. And I crave that in pretty much every single scenario. So for me, this was extremely difficult because I was missing a huge piece of my life, right? That social aspect. And I really needed that for me to sort of thrive. So one of the things that sort of happened to me is I kind of went down this path of uncertainty, where I was in life, who I was friends with, what direction I should take. And I would say my faith wasn't exactly the most important part of my life at the time. And we'll just do a raise of hands here. How many people absolutely hated the concept of like being stuck inside during COVID? Like so many of us, I mean, it had its benefits, right? People got to play Fortnite. People got to do kind of whatever they wanted to. But see, exactly. I struggled whenever it came to staying inside and not seeing people and having to do school online. For me personally, life was just meh. And I didn't know what to do about it because it's not like I had a grounding factor that was sort of keeping me bolstered to what I wanted to do in life. I was missing my friends. I was missing family members. I was missing the outdoors. I was craving all these things that I, quite frankly, wasn't getting from being stuck inside. So my mental health began to tank. And I didn't exactly know what to do, right? I was super uncertain. Nothing really could necessarily make me happy at the moment. I was struggling with a lot of things. I was just missing life in general, quite frankly. That's like the easiest way to put it. And at the time, there was no projected date for when things would be fixed. There was no projected date for when we would go back to school. No projected date whenever you would see your friends again. And that really took a toll on me. One of the things that I sort of wanted to touch on is I had a conversation with my mom, how I just wanted to give up. And I was sort of succumbing to the depression and the anxiety that was sort of going along with COVID. And it was more than just the social element. It was just the lack of living. And I wanted to live, and I quite frankly wasn't by any means. I mean, I think all of us can sort of testify to the fact that being stuck in a pandemic, especially for you middle schoolers, y'all were young, so it probably didn't seem that awful, but for us high schoolers, that was a difficult time period, I would argue, right? Like, there was not much to do. And so one of the things that I want to tie back into is handling these situations like how God would. Nobody knew what was going on with me, right? That's that concept of sort of keeping it under wraps, keeping it under the surface where nobody can see it. And that was me. And if you were a friend or acquaintance, everything appeared fine at first sight, and I kind of had this facade that I hid everything negative behind because I wasn't sure where to put it or who to confide in. Now, we're going to talk about Job, right? Job, like I said, wealthy figure, good guy, cool guy. Now, Satan and God kind of got into this quarrel over Job. Satan argued that Job was only faithful to God because of his abundance of blessings. And God permitted Satan to take everything away from Job. Now, this included his family, this included his health, which I would argue are pretty important things in our lives, right? So Job wasn't exactly the happiest guy at the time. He had everything stripped away from him, and he didn't know why. And there was that uncertainty. He wanted the pain to heal. But just like Job, the pain cannot just be taken away from leaning away from God, but instead leaning towards God. For me personally, as I touched on previously, my faith wasn't exactly super important for me. It was something where I went to church, but it wasn't my life. I considered getting baptized, but I wasn't yet, right? I believed, but I didn't have that sort of strong, firm foundation of actually being baptized and knowing what the truth was. And I didn't see it as an important thing in my lifetime. Now, my moment of retribution, where I sort of realized that, my goodness, what was I missing out on this whole time? And what was I sacrificing that I could have saved all along, was my relationship with God. And I was missing that throughout all of the time where I was sad, throughout all of the time where I was depressed, where I didn't know if I would wake up the next day and be alive. I used prayer as my greatest weapon. And I argue every single person in this room can do the same. I was sad, I was lonely, I was confused, I was lackluster in my friend department, right? Socially, I didn't have what I wanted. I just wanted everything to end. But that prayer, those prayers where I could just let all of my emotions out, where it could just be a heart-to-heart between me and God, that in itself is probably the most powerful thing that I hope you take with you today. And the more I leaned on God's understanding and prayer, the more the world's understanding just seemed so ugly. It wasn't the solution that I wanted personally. I realized just how precious life itself was and what I was missing. Whoa, that paper is really bent. Hello there, friend. And God is the reason why my life is worth living. I even used counselors as a tool at the time, but all of them brought me back to the same realization that God is what I was missing. And I trusted and redirected my gaze back to Jesus, even whenever it seemed hard, even whenever I didn't want to wake up the next day. Not just uncertainty, but I knew that I needed God. And I replaced lies with the truth. One of my favorite Hillsong United quotes is, "Where feet may fail and fear surrounds me, you've never failed and you won't stop now." Now, some of us may lose our footing. Some of us may lose our entire leg in the process of running this race of life. But what I want you to take from this quote, where it says, "You've never failed and you won't stop now," God will never stop running towards you, even whenever you're running away from him. Tying this back into Job, Job didn't understand why he was suffering, but he remained faithful. He remained faithful even whenever it was difficult. He used the power of prayer, and it became a weapon of retribution for him. His story encourages us to trust God even whenever we don't fully understand the circumstances. Hence, it can work for other people too, not just using yourself as an example. Pray even when you don't know or don't comprehend the storms of others. Like I said, mine was a silent struggle until I brought it into the light. And I have 3 main takeaways that I want y'all to take from this message. A little bit of Texan coming out there with the y'all. But my 3 main takeaways that I want y'all to take from this is, my mom once put this beautifully: prayer is the devil's greatest weakness and God's greatest weapon. Use it. Prayer can and will help, so please, I highly encourage you, lean on talking to God as much as possible. Even if it's just a conversation where you're like, "Hey God, I have a math test tomorrow," right? You may think that it's so decrepit and pitiful to bring up something that to your Heavenly Father, you think it might seem unimportant to him. But to him, every single time you reach out to him, he rejoices, and he's grateful for when you do. The second one I have is, you may not know all of a scenario. Take, for example, somebody else's struggle, but everybody has their own battles in life. Everybody's is a valid battle that they are going through. Nothing is not hard in life, even in the small things. Life may not treat you or others around you well, but you can combat this with the power of Jesus. Looking out for people around you and being an understanding individual of the uniqueness of all these different situations and how in life we're all just trying to get through this on this one little rock together. I encourage you to look out for people the way God does. God is always looking out for you, no matter how small you feel, no matter how big you feel, whenever you want to cry, whenever you want to laugh, no matter the situation, God is always with you. So why don't we do the same with other people? The third and last one, and this one goes kind of hand in hand with the previous takeaway, but not only being understanding of people's situations, but also treating the scenarios the way God would, with the same establishment of judgment. God doesn't judge us via the predicament. God doesn't judge us no matter the emotions you're feeling, no matter what you're going through. So what gives us the authority to do otherwise? What gives us the authority to look at someone's situation and judge them when us ourselves walk imperfectly? So I encourage you, show compassion and love like God, not the way of the world. God's love is everlasting. The world's love is temporary. Show unconditional love to people as people, no matter if you agree or disagree with them. Now, tying this all into the end of Job's story reminds us that we never know what somebody else is going through. In Job's situation, he had nothing, but yet he still remained faithful to God. His friends were uncertain of what he was going through, but yet God always remained by his side. So I encourage you to be the godly figure in that situation, not his friends. And it also reminds us that, like Job's friends, we may not understand their pain, we may not understand their suffering, and they may not even bring it to fruition with us, but that doesn't mean it isn't real. It may not be real for you, but it's real for them. Instead of assuming, choose to pray for others, knowing that even when we don't understand someone's struggles, God does. So, everybody is fighting an unseen battle. God knows our battles, therefore, judge every situation as God himself would. You may not know the specifics as to what's going on in the situation. It could be something minuscule. It could be something ginormous going on in their life. But if anything is going on in general, God is always looking out for them. So why don't we look out for each other? Thank you.